everybody. Welcome to the Mom Project's mPower Hour. My name is Elizabeth Shackelford, and I am here today with Meg Dinga, Senior Director of Marketing Operations and Special Projects, and Elen Macaskill, Chief Customer Officer, both from BP Pulse. Hi.
Hi.
Hi
How you doing?
Okay, well, since this is a community event, I encourage everyone here today to pop a hello in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. I'm coming from Houston today, and it's actually like a very nice, beautiful fall day. It's 65 degrees outside. Ellen, what about you?
So I am coming from the New Forest in England, which I encourage you, if you don't know, to Google it. It's very beautiful. But today it's incredibly stormy. So we've had a storm hit. There are like 100-mile-an-hour winds. There are trees down. My kids got sent home from school. So they're in the next door room watching Friends. So God knows what's going to happen. Everybody could burst in. The internet could go, it's life. It's all fine.
That's what life is about. Don't worry. Meg, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth, you win in this story. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and I think it's 41 degrees here, and it snowed yesterday. So, yeah, can we have fall back? That would be.
I'll send some your way.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
we got enough leaves, just not the weather.
Yeah, we have no leaves. Well, today we are going to dive into motherhood in the workplace, journeys about IVF, and then we're just going to talk about BP's company culture, especially as it pertains to parents in the workforce. And just a few housekeeping notes. This session will be available here on LinkedIn and on YouTube, available for rewatch at any time. And we will have time for a Q&A at the end. So pop any questions for Meg and Ellen into the comment section, and we will try to get to all of them at the end. So before we kind of dive into your professional journey, let's do a quick round of getting to know you. Meg, we'll start with you. Coffee or tea?
Both. Caffeine in any form. IV preferably, just as fast as I can get it.
Okay, and then what about the best book you've read or recently binge watched show?
I'll have to follow up with everybody on the best book, because I did read an awesome romance novel that I loved and was super quick read recently, but I forgot the name of it. But binge watch show. I watch all the Real Housewives shows, and I'm obsessed with Beverly Hills, which has been great. And then also The Golden Bachelor has been really engaging, and I love Gary. I think he's just the sweetest guy, and I'm just excited for people to continue to find love, regardless of their age. So,
I have got to watch The Golden Bachelor. I've seen nothing but great things about it on social media, and I'm like,
so good.
It's on my watch list. What's your favorite app on your phone?
Probably TikTok. I'm really trying to stay on top of the youth culture. The younger people on my team always make references to things, and I got to make sure that I understand them. So yeah, that's me on TikTok.
And then at the Mom Project, we talk a lot about superpowers. What would you say your superpower is?
I think my superpower is not specific to me. I think it's true for every mom, and that's resilience. You have to just keep dealing with it and taking whatever comes. So we're all resilient.
Oh, love that. Okay, Ellen, you are up. Coffee or tea?
Until a year ago, I would have said tea, and then I took up coffee. At the age of 42, when all of my friends were giving it up, I've taken up coffee. Don't drink tea anymore, but I only drink really, really expensive, like hand drip pour over coffee with those swan neck things. So yeah, I have very luxurious coffees often. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. The best book you've read or recently binge watched show?
Oh, I just looked up who wrote this because I absolutely loved it. On my holiday, I read Everything's Fine by Cecilia Rabes, and I hugely recommend it. It was absolutely brilliant. Really, really good.
Writing it down.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna write that down too. I always get great recommendations from me, so I'm like, yes. And I always think really good Mom Project book club, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay, favorite app on your phone?
I don't know about my favorite. The one I definitely use the most is my Trainline app. Like commuting. Is the train going to be late? Am I going to get like the school bus is going to go? Is the train going? All of that, like organization. That's the one I use the most.
That's a perfect answer. And then what's your superpower?
I think juggling and prioritizing and working out what to do next. I love that. For those of you with kids of the right age, Frozen 2, Anna's song, Do the Next Right Thing. I think I'm quite good at just being like, okay, I can't do it all. What's the next thing that I've got to do? I have that like as a theme tune playing in my life, do the next right thing.
Moms are incredible multitaskers. We all know that, but I'm going to give that song a re-listen. We haven't really been watching Frozen 2 lately, but we'll get back on it.
It's a great song.
Yeah. So good.
Okay, well, let's dive in to your career journeys. We want to hear more about, where it started and how you got to where you are today. Ellen, let's start with you.
Yeah, okay. So interesting talking to you from BP Pulse. So I started my career in the beauty industry. So I spent 20 years in the beauty industry, and I joined L'Oreal, the world's biggest beauty company, straight out of university, really because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I loved beauty. And I wanted to move to London. I didn't grow up in the big city, and I knew I wanted to go there. My parents couldn't afford to kind of, help me out moving to London. So I got a job at L'Oreal. And who knew, but I loved it. And I think when you do something that you really love, you're often better at it. And I was really good at it. So I spent 20 years in beauty, 13 at L'Oreal. I had my 2 girls who were 11 and 9 when I was there. I came back from my first maternity leave and was made general manager of L'Oreal in the UK. So kind of got this really big promotion when I was doing that. And then I moved to The Body Shop, which is a natural, ethical beauty retailer. And I was 7 years there. And then I moved to BP a year ago to lead the customer team for BP Pulse. So that's me.
Wow. And then how did you know you wanted to make the move from beauty to BP Pulse?
Yeah, everyone asked me that. They're kind of like, what are you, how did that happen?
They're not the same, like EV charging beauty, not the same.
Well, I suppose a couple of things. I'd started to think, I didn't want to be selling stuff to people anymore. That I felt like, I'm really thinking about my own purchases and my own consumption and how I reduce that a lot. So we're doing lots of great things at The Body Shop with refills and all of those things. But, the beauty industry moves so fast and it gets so complex. And I thought, I don't want to be selling stuff to people anymore. And I thought, what do people really need? And how do I make the experience of buying that easier, more enjoyable? So I was really conscious that that's the kind of industry I wanted to move into. And then the other thing that I've always loved in my career, which is very similar about what I do now to beauty, is I love talking to people about what I do. So I love kind of focus groups. When you work in beauty, you can talk to anybody. What do you like? What's your moisturizer? What's your lipstick? So I started to log all the conversations I had and said, what am I talking to people about all the time at the moment? And everyone's like, do you have an EV? Are you going to buy an EV? If you've got an EV, do you charge your EV? Where do you charge your EV? So I sort of realized that 30% of my conversations were becoming about, do you have an EV or not? So it was really thinking, actually, wow, that's something that's really important for the future of the planet, which is a really core value of mine. It's something that we really need to do, and at the moment is really difficult for customers. How do we make it better? So it'd be a really good use of my skill set. So yeah, that's how I made the move. And I don't think I would have done it if my kids were younger than they are now, at 9 and 11. They're a bit more independent. They're less kind of less in need of me in some ways, more in others. But I sort of felt like I had the energy and resilience to think about it. I don't think I would have made such a big move when they were littler, but I really felt ready for it at that point.
That's all amazing advice. And I know that so many people on our platform, I'm echoing, I'm sorry. Let me mute myself. I know so many people on our platform are thinking about pivots or, how do they make that next move and how do they get to the core of what they really want to be doing? And so I think that's very, very valuable advice. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I'd just say as well, it probably took me a year to work that out.
Yeah,
it took me a year of thinking and hard work and planning and discussions to be able to do that. It was a long time before I kind of clicked on what it was I wanted to do next.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen overnight. And I think sometimes we're looking for those immediate answers. And this is testament to the fact that you really had to it took a long time to formulate what that What does a meaningful next move look like for me and my family? Because you have to take into consideration what is going on in your personal life too. Meg, let's dive into you because I know from your bio that you have a very interesting pivot as well. So let's hear about your career journey and your background and how you got to BP Pulse.
Yeah, actually not entirely dissimilar to Ellen, different industries. I started my career in the entertainment industry. I was a talent agent. I worked for a big five agency in LA and rep cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, worked a lot with ad agencies, all that stuff. And I loved my clients and I loved helping foster that creative process and build those relationships. I hated having to think about budgets, arguing with line producers, having to keep a quota, all of that, that less people-y stuff. And so I knew the agent piece of it for me wasn't really the right thing ultimately, because it is super hyper competitive. And, I'm more of a collaborative person than I am a competitive person. And so I wanted to continue to do creative things and help people, push themselves creatively and leverage those advertising relationships. But I wanted to do something that I felt had more lasting impact. Not that I needed to be the person who was like, collecting the trophy at the end of the day, but that I, left some kind of legacy beyond I got my clients some more money for a job, which is important, but not the most important thing maybe that I could do. So I went back to school. I did a kind of like a adult education thing at UCLA, focused on design thinking in particular, systems building, process building, also graphic and web stuff, which kind of kept me going in terms of, thinking around other things. I picked up side jobs. I worked a lot. I worked like 80 hours a week at that time, so I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. But what that led me to was really feeling like I wanted to be in sustainability. And I got my own agent, like a little rep for my design work, who found me this consulting firm that really just worked in transportation and clean energy. And I thought it was the right move. It was a long process getting in there. It was between me and like one other person, and then they didn't hire me right away, but then they called me back a year later. So then I started, and it was funny because in that time that I had interviewed the first time and then, re-met them, I went through IVF. So that was like a whole thing. So anyway, they called me back. I was like, yeah, this is the job that I want to take. So I started working in design for this clean energy consulting firm. I met someone there who, I still work with her now. She's my boss now. We just had the most amazing relationship and just immediately had the same thoughts and worked the same way. And so then we moved over into the, fleet electrification space, moved over into Amply, which was acquired by BP at the end of 2021. And now she leads the Pulse US marketing team, and I get to work right under her. So that's a long story, but that's the whole journey.
No, we love the full story of how you got to where you are. I think it's so impactful, and it's helpful for me to listen to because I'm like, yeah, you can you think about this, and you think, well, we talk about this a lot, that career paths are not linear and they're nothing
Yeah.
but you have to figure it out and it ebbs and flows and then add in IVF or add in, two young children and you can't make the moves or you can't do the things you want to do. So it's also, we love hearing these stories. So thank you both for sharing these and like the power of the pivot and really focusing in on what you want to be doing and a meaningful work that you now get to both do with two entirely different backgrounds. I love it. Okay, well now we'll shift kind of, I know we touched on this, but let's shift into motherhood in the workplace. How has your perspective on your career changed after motherhood? Meg, let's start with you.
Priorities, I would say, in the best possible way. You realize that you can't do all of it all the time, which I think at first was a challenge for me being a very type A person. But it also really forced me to think about what was a priority for me to handle and touch And, that extended very much into the activities that I was doing day to day at work, the choices that I made, the things I signed myself up for, and then also, how I balanced my time, to make sure that I felt like I was giving the right amount of time to my daughter. But yeah, I would say biggest like spotlight on your priorities in such a great way, because I feel like, with a career trajectory, and thinking about continuing to have a career and grow a career, there's always that thought, at least for me, in the back of my head of like, I have to do more. I have to constantly prove myself. I have to constantly move up. I have to be at every event. I have to do everything. And it really forced me to say, do you really need to do that? And is that maybe a question that I need to ask myself about how I value myself and how I perceive my value comes across to other people? Is it constantly showing up, or is it nailing the things that I have and want to commit to? So yeah, that shift, I would say, is the big thing.
Absolutely. Ellen, what about you? How has your perspective on your career changed after motherhood?
Someone said to me just when I got back from maternity leave, this fabulous French woman at L'Oréal, and she said, Ellen, you will find that what has changed is your tolerance for bullshit. And I was like, it's so true, your tolerance for bullshit. Because you start measuring everything. I could be at home with my kids, or I could be in this meeting, right? I could be doing bath time, or I can be here. And so I do think it shifts your perspective for what you're willing to tolerate, because I always think if I'm going to be away from my kids, especially when they were younger, now they don't want to hang out with me as much, but especially when they were younger, if I am going to be away from them, I want it to matter. I want it to mean something. I want to have impact. I want to be at work. I want to do really great work that I'm proud of, that they're going to be proud of. And if it's not that, then I don't want to be doing it at all. I'd rather be at home. So I think that's been the biggest thing, like a sharpening focus on, I want to have impact. I want to have impact. I want to be efficient, and just, not being willing to mess around. It was clear to me early on that I enjoy working. I even knew that on maternity leave. Like I absolutely, I wasn't a baby person. I love them when they're kind of toddlers, but I wasn't really a baby person. But even when they were toddlers, I like coming to work for those particular hours, doing a great job, having that energy, talking to other people. And then I like coming home and being a mum. So just having that balance was really important. I knew I wanted to work, but I knew when I was there, it just had to be meaningful.
Oh, thank you. No, I agree with you. I felt like that too about I love my babies, but I love when they're toddlers. It just, you get to know that I think it's some people love it and some people are like, yeah, I'm glad that I can sleep through the night now. It's just different things.
The sleep part
You just
is
have to
very
go on
real.
there.
But the baby, I love a little baby.
Love
I
it.
love the baby.
I know that's the problem, is like, you love it and you just, and we can talk about that but I hear you. I mean, I think it's like, you really have to do something that's meaningful for you. And there's a reason why they go to school every day, or you have that separation. It's because you're doing meaningful, impactful work. And I knew when, I knew that I wasn't loving my job when I was like so sad about leaving them every day,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think I remember feeling that in my last job, thinking, this doesn't work for me anymore. This is not what I want to be doing anymore. And when it starts bleeding into your home life, like I was like, I just didn't have energy when I was coming home. I didn't have like winning energy coming home being, I've had a great day. So I was a bit of a drag in the house and was a bit more cross than normal. So I could feel that my work was sort of tipping into my personal life in not a great way. And I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. But also, as I said to you, I wasn't quite sure what next. So I had to sort of manage that for a while and just say, okay, I know I'm not happy right now, but I also know I don't just want to leave something and go to something else that isn't quite right. So I'm just going to have to ride this period out of working out what it is I want to do next as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and Ellen, on that same vein, the dogs are barking outside. It's like working from home.
Oh, okay.
Like, can you hope you guys all can't hear the dogs? But anyway, Ellen, how did you manage thinking about your career trajectory, but then also thinking about family planning and working that into the equation of what that could look like. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I love the concept that you can plan a family,
I know,
right?
I'm
And
so sorry. I don't.
but no, it's good. I used to think you could. I spent my whole kind of teenage years and 20s being terrified of like getting pregnant and, all of those things. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, if you
And then when
look
I'm
at a
like
boy, you're
30,
suddenly pregnant. Yeah.
yeah, you're like, then I'm 30 and, I've been doing this job. And I remember thinking I was marketing director at L'Oreal, which is quite a big job. And I remember thinking, right, I sort of feel like I've done this for a few years. So, now would be a great time to have a baby. And then I can go on maternity leave and then I'll come back and I'll do a different job. And then, of course, we were trying for kids for a while. And we were like, uh-oh, this is not happening. So there's my God, I can't believe I've spent the last however long being terrified of getting pregnant. Now it turns out I can't get pregnant. And then I'd been in my job for 2 or 3 years, which is a long time at somewhere like L'Oreal. So they were saying, what do you want to do next? And do you want to go to New York, or do you want to go to India and come and meet people and let's have these conversations? Whilst in the background, I was like going to hospital and having all of these checks, me and my husband, about what's going on. And then I had a problem with my fallopian tube. So they said, look, you're going to have IVF if you want to get pregnant. So I had like brilliant people in HR and leadership at L'Oreal who was so wonderful going, let's interview you for these roles. And at like 7 a.m. in the morning, I was like driving to the hospital because I didn't want to tell anybody, because I just thought like it's so awful if it doesn't work and it goes wrong. And then you've told loads of people. And I just thought, I really don't want that for me to be able to manage this. I can't have lots of people saying, and what are you doing? And how does it go? I couldn't manage that. So it was really complex trying to work out what do I do and how do I sort of stall my career without drawing attention to the fact that I'm doing this because I don't want everyone to know. And then I had a great conversation with someone in HR where I think I just like broke down in floods of tears and was like, I don't know what to do. And she was so brilliant. And she said, you've got to go and talk to your boss. And I went to talk to this fabulous woman called Gail, who was my boss at the time. And she was so brilliant. And she said, right, I'm just going to tell everybody that there's no way that you can move because you're indispensable and you've got to do this project for at least 18 months. And I don't care what they say to me, but I'm going to tell them it's all about me and they've got to wait for you for 18 months. And she said, you don't tell anybody else. I will take this for you. And she was so brilliant. She was so utterly brilliant. So that made a massive difference. And then, first round of IVF didn't work. Second round of IVF did. I had my beautiful eldest daughter, came back to work, and then was thinking, okay, well, we've had one beautiful daughter and, that's more children than we thought we could have. And then got pregnant again really quickly, naturally, which was something of a surprise, which is fine. And I love my second daughter. She's amazing. But then it meant that suddenly I'd got given this really big job when I went back after my first maternity leave. And like 3 months after being given the job, I was like, okay, actually, I'm pregnant. And they were so wonderful. Again, like they were just like, that's great news. How can we support you? So I think during that journey, I learned a few things. Number one, you can't plan it. The reality is you can't plan. And the second thing is that, people are really generous and surprisingly supportive. And it feels like you're very on your own sometimes on those journeys, if you're on IVF or even, I had a fantastic, very senior woman working for me in my last job who came in to tell me she was pregnant and she was clearly terrified. And I'd known her for years and she knows my story. And she was so nervous. She's like, I'm so sorry, but I'm pregnant. And I was like, what? So I think we all carry a lot on this journey. But I think the thing I've learned is people are unbelievably generous and supportive in the main. I know not everybody, but there are good souls out there.
Oh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Meg, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Ellen said is right. You can't plan it. And to think that you can plan your life around that activity or plan your career around it is good luck to you in the best possible way. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I come back to time and time again and is still clear in Ellen's story and has always been the true for me as well, has been the people around you supporting, and women especially supporting each other consistently, because just as you were saying, Ellen, there's a stigma, there's a fear around communicating around this stuff, especially if it doesn't just magically one day a stork delivers a baby to your house. Like, there is this perceived stigma around it, and for us women to support each other and be present with each other through that process, I think is an invaluable gift that no one else can really give you in that same way, especially if it can translate in that way to your work experience, and allowing you to continue to have that career. I took a slightly different approach, I would say, to my fertility journey. I also went through IVF to have my one daughter, who's amazing. But we did 3 years of other fertility stuff before we landed on IVF, as almost everybody does. You go through every test possible, take every shot. You basically become a doctor. I made jokes to my fertility specialist, like, "Can I do your job now? I think I can do your job now."
I'm busy, right?
Yeah, right. Like, who do you need me to see patients for you? You seem busy. Anyway, so you go through all of that, and I really kept most of that a secret, and it weighed on me so heavily. I mean, I'm an extrovert by nature, and so not sharing this with people and the emotional toll it was taking on me, everybody could read something was wrong on my face, and it felt so unnatural to me. And then I started to really think about it, like, and everyone should do what they're comfortable with doing. But I started to think about it for me, and I kind of got mad about the thought process that there was this stigma, and I couldn't, or I shouldn't say it. Like, there was something inherently wrong with me, that I was going to go through this, and therefore I couldn't or shouldn't tell people. And so I just started saying things like, you know what, I've been going through this for 3 years and it sucks, and I think I'm going to have IVF. I would show up to work, or conversations with friends, just say, like, I'm not fully present right now, and I apologize, but this is what I'm dealing with, and I'm having a tough day. And it was in that moment where I just said, I have to do this for myself, that other people really started to recognize that they could show up for me. And there were definitely moments where I had to draw a boundary to say, like, hey, I appreciate you so much that you care. I can't have every time I see you ask me these questions about how it's going. I definitely will share with you whenever I'm ready to. So did have to draw some boundaries there for my own sanity. But the overwhelming amount of support that I got, both in the workplace and outside of it, was I can't measure it. It was just so incredibly important for me. So I'm glad I did ultimately. Everybody should do what they feel comfortable doing, but that was kind of my approach to it.
Yeah, and I found out, but as we started announcing this event that we're doing tonight around BP, there's actually a group. So they have these kind of business resource groups, I think they're called, resource teams, that employees can form on different subjects. And there's one especially dedicated to fertility issues. So if you're going through anything like this, I mean, that's the benefit of a massive company. There's like a whole employee group dedicated to supporting you and help you navigate it. And whatever country you're in, you can call somebody and they can point you in the right direction for things, which is, I think so amazing. You need to be somewhere that, you've got a support network. I really agree with you, Meg.
And what a testament, especially with BP, those employee resource groups are so imperative to, feeling connected at work, bringing your whole self to work, whether you're remote or in office or hybrid. And I think that's such, I think we've made such strides in the last few years about people being able to bring their whole selves to work, because you can't just leave it at the door. What you're going through is so physical, it's emotional, it takes a toll in every aspect of your life. So to be able to just be like, nope, I'm going to compartmentalize that and put that somewhere else and come back and talk about, Q1 and what we're, it's hard to do that. And it's hard to be present.
And I try now with all of my team meetings to start with what I call a check-in, which is like, check in your baggage. What are you holding coming into this meeting? And the other day I had a really dreadful day because I'd had a massive argument with my daughter. Like, she was refusing to get up in the morning and I was trying to get the train into work, and it just came to that point, and she started screaming at me. And Meg gave me advice just before this thing that when your child's screaming at you, you should try to whisper to them because it will calm you down. But I did not have that advice that morning. So I screamed. She cried. I was like, get out of the house, I've got to. So I screamed, she cried. And then the whole day I was not concentrating until I saw her that evening. So, the bit that starts with being distracted by IVF goes to, the day you drop them at school and they're in tears for no reason, or the day you were thinking about getting into work and you scream at them. Once you've had kids, there's a piece of you somewhere else in the world, you know what I mean, that
Always.
distracts some of you.
Yep.
And if they go off to school smiling, you don't think about it, but if they go off to school or nursery or whatever, or they're ill, there's a piece of you all day in the back of your mind. They're like, what's going on? So that bringing your whole self and being able to say that to somebody at work really matters.
Yeah, I think about, dropping my 16-month-old and I'm like, did I give him Tylenol? Do his teeth still hurt? Is he taking a nap? I love that analogy. There's a piece of you that's out in the world, and we have to acknowledge that. And I've never heard it phrased like that before. And it's just so sweet and meaningful to me. It's like, yeah, there's just two people out there that are walking around, and I need to think about their problems as well as what's happening to, me and my little world here at work.
Yeah, and when they're home, mine got sent home today because of the storm. And I remember during COVID, when they're actually at home, it's kind of worse. I mean, somehow when they're out of earshot, it's fine. But when you're in earshot, I can sort of vaguely hear them in the back room that one of them's just been like, give me the remote control or something. You're hyper attuned into what they're doing. So working from home when they are at home as well, I don't know what's worse.
It's a whole different.
Or what I call the suspicious silence, which is like you hear them and you're like, okay, this playing is happening, and then nothing.
They found sweets on my makeup. That's what that is. They found sweets on my makeup, or they've learned the password to Roblox. It's one of those three things. That's it.
Oh, that's really funny. I have so many tubes of lipstick at my desk that are broken and just in half because Fiona will just do a full. Okay, well, so I think too, it's kind of on that topic. What have you learned about managing your career as well as being a parent, and how do we, take those learnings and take them with us throughout our career? Ellen, we'll start with you.
I think setting boundaries, everybody says it, but you've got to set boundaries up front. And I think it's a good thing to set those boundaries even before you become a parent. I don't think that working 16-hour days is really healthy for anybody. And I like to be very engaged and on when I'm at work. And I know what it takes for me to do that is at least 8 hours sleep, getting some exercise, doing other things. And that's often where I have my, brightest thoughts about what I need to do at work, because I've got a bit of distance. So I've learned to frame it for myself that, leaving work on time, not doing emails at the weekends and evenings and all of those things, doing that as an investment in my career and me doing my job well. So it's like actually me not leaving on time, sleeping, getting a break means that I am not going into work with my batteries charged. And that is unfair to the team I lead, to the company I work for. So framing it like that, rather than, oh, I'm so sorry, I need to go home, or I'm so sorry, I'm not going to do that, helps me feel really empowered to make those choices. So I just always think, what does it take for me to be at my best at work? And then I do whatever that takes, which is inevitably like turning off at 6 o'clock, having dinner with my kids, and having a good night's sleep and all those things. So I definitely, I definitely invest in that. And thinking, when I was going through the interview process for BP, I asked so many people, like, okay, tell me about the work-life balance. Do you go and see your kids' plays? Do you go and see this? That they called me up at one point and said, we've just all been comparing notes and you've asked so many times about, like, what are you worried about? Like, of course, we're going to let you go and see your kids' school play. And I was like, I just want to be really super clear. Do not hire me if you are going to tell me that I can't do sports day, or that I can't stay at home when one of them is sick, or like, don't hire me. So I've become much more confident in saying those things. It's like, this is who I am. This is what I need to be able to do well for you. You can take it or leave it, but I'm going to be super clear about what it takes for me to do a good job.
What I love about that is how you were so transparent about, I need to know about the work-life balance. And I think that's
Mhm.
helping inspire and empower our community to also ask that in the interview. Because if they're not giving you the answer you need, or if they're hesitant or weary about how much you're asking that, it's not the right fit. You want to be
It's
at a
not
place
Red
that
right.
flag.
supports your family life and your
And you read these, I got these job descriptions and it was things like, you know, someone who won't sleep until we've met goals. And I was like, that's a big warning signal for me.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, different companies have different cultures. And I think you've just got to be really honest about what it takes for you.
Yeah, and just thinking about what season of life am I in, and what's physically possible for me right now. And maybe when I was 25 and really trying to, climb that ladder, maybe sleeping till I hit not sleeping until I hit those goals was feasible and something that excited me, but right now, that literally sounds like the worst thing. I need my sleep. Meg, talk to me too about, parenthood and your career journey and kind of how that's impacted where you are today.
Yeah. I mean, Ellen said it best about boundaries, so critical and necessary. But the other side of that, I think, is um, how do you get to the point of establishing a boundary? So when I think about my own process of establishing boundaries at work, I had to kind of divorce myself from the emotional fallout that can sit with that of if I do go into an interview, if I do go into a conversation and say, what's the work life balance, or how many hours do I really need to commit to this, or anything, I have to let go of the perception that that is inherently negative, or that someone will view me as being not as committed because I'm asking those questions or because I'm setting a boundary, right? And so that was the piece, at least for me, that I kind of had to wrestle with that emotionally of like it doesn't reflect on me negatively. I'm not a terrible person all of a sudden or a bad employee because I'm saying I have to turn my email off or I'm not going to respond to this or I'm on PTO. I'll get back to you when I get back, that kind of thing. That kind of level of ruthlessness, I think, again, like societally, for women and people who identify as women, that thought process is like, oh, I'm expected to show up in every possible way, and I have internalized, um, what it means to not be fully present in everything that I do. But the reality is, in order for you to be fully present, just as you were saying, Ellen, you have to be able to have those boundaries in those spaces, right? How that has manifested for me is routine. So I live and die by routine. Every day has a dedicated thing that I do for the house from a cleaning perspective, and then like a household management perspective. Blocks of time on my calendar where I do certain things for work. I'm fortunate that I have a partner. My husband and I split the drop off pickups for Hannah. So all of that stuff is a routine for us, and that allows me to remove the emotional labor of constantly thinking about how to decisions that I have to make, and then I can really be present in every activity that I'm doing because I can say, "Hey, I'm at drop off right now. I'll call you back in 10 minutes," or whatever it is, just so I have those parts of me protected.
I was just thinking as you said that, Meg, that the other thing I've learned is outsource. I outsource.
Mm.
When you say I do household stuff, I just try to outsource everything. I have the cleaners who come in to help me with the house. I just say to them, I don't have time to tidy and put everything away. So I'm just going to pay you for an extra hour to help fold the laundry and do those things. I have someone who comes to the house to pick up my sheets and they get laundered. I have anything that I can outsource, I outsource. And I get my kids to do their homework at school because I really want to make sure that when I have free time, I can spend it doing either something that's kind of for me that helps restore me or is something nice to do with them. I don't want to shout at them about their homework and have they done it? So I do that at school. I don't want to be ironing. My husband said, oh, I'll do the ironing. Like, don't worry, I'll do it. And I said, no, because watching you do the ironing will really annoy me and make me feel bad about not doing ironing. So I would rather pay for someone else to do the ironing so I don't have to watch you do the ironing and feel bad about it. But outsourcing, getting a help, there's a phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. So I think that's so true. Just like having neighbors who will step in. And I had a nanny when my kids were very little And having that flexibility, I appreciate it was really expensive. We didn't go on holidays. We didn't have a nice guy. I spent all my spare income on a nanny so that, you know, I wouldn't have to be absolutely there for the pickup at that particular time if I was late or I had a meeting or whatever. If I knew if I know I've got a big week at work, I'll try and get grandma down or a sister down or whatever it takes to have extra backup. So getting that flexibility, I think, and knowing that you sometimes need backups really helps as well.
Those were all amazing tips. And I think what I also want to ask is, let's talk about BP and, how they help foster a culture of support for parents. Meg, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Ellen mentioned earlier the business resource groups, the BRGs. They're great. I mean, they go in through literally every possible thing you can think of, from if you're dealing with a certain medical issue that you want to get support on from other people who have that piece of it. Certainly the parenting, IVF stuff, all of it. That's great because it's a dedicated resource in a place. The other thing that I'll say that isn't, from a corporate perspective, we want to make sure that we have those frameworks established. Everybody wants to have those established, in any corporate environment that you're in. But I also think the people part of it, and it's hard to really, I don't know, identify that or communicate that in a interview or in a job description. But the people that are around you, every single person that I have met and worked with at BP has been really just super positive and supportive with anything related to parenting. There are lots of people that I talk to, just if in passing in a meeting, I hear that they've had a baby or something about their kids, we'll have a dialogue later about how that's going. We send pictures to each other of our kids, all of that stuff. I block off my calendar for, end of school time to have a snack with my daughter, and that's never been a thing. So just having that awareness that there are all these people around you that are supporting you, I think has been the single most beneficial thing for me. Obviously the frameworks are great and super important, but again, the day-to-day culture of just the people around you really, really has such a massive impact. And it's been nice to work with other parents around me and have them tell us insane stories, see all the pictures, all that fun stuff, commiserate.
Yeah, I think it is the nicest company that I've worked for. People are so genuinely nice and caring is one of the core values. Care for others is one of the core values of BP, and I think that actually really does suffuse everything that happens. So the emphasis on personal safety, on well-being, on just a deep sense of care, I really think runs through the company. People are really nice, really supportive, and it's also has a very diverse, I mean, it's a vast company, so it's got a very diverse mix of people and ages, as you say, Meg. So there are people getting married and having their first baby, and I had lunch with one of the execs last week, and her daughter's just turned kind of 18, and she was telling me about the journey of when her daughter was a teenager. She was kind of like, prepare yourself. But it was great. So actually there are all these people that you could draw on. And my boss's kids, he's just sent the last one off to university. So it's actually really nice having that whole kind of experience there that you can draw on. And because people are so nice, they're willing to share with you about, how they've navigated transitions to middle school and high school and secondary school and universities and what that's like. And, I think that's been great. And I'd say as well, it is the men at BP are also very involved with their kids, it seems to me, right? That it's not, or maybe it's so, 10 years on from when I had my first kids. So, and I remember someone turning around in a meeting to me and saying, I'm sorry that we're running over. Are you going to be all right with your kids, like 10 years ago? And I was like, yes, I'm fine, because my husband and nanny are at home. Hello, to the man sitting next door to me. How are you doing with your kids? But so it was all on women. I don't feel that now. So I don't know if it's just 10 years on or in the culture that we're working in at BP. you know, that all the men are going off and watching the school plays and dropping their kids off and all those things. So it's probably the extra 10 years, I don't know, but I certainly think it feels more balanced.
I agree. I think there has been some shifts, but obviously still a ways to go, and we're getting there closer, making strides every day. As a reminder, we do have a Q&A, so pop any questions you have for Meg and Ellen. My last question is, we talk a lot about balance, about how you hold on, now I have to look up the great quote. I don't know why you don't find balance, you have to create it. So, can you both share how you create balance in your lives? Meg, we'll start with you.
Sure. How do I create balance?
Or you don't. Like, my balance is literally a day-to-day thing, so don't feel like you have to have the perfect
Yeah.
answer to this.
I mean, routine is the thing that really, really, really helps. And then also recognizing that balance is inherently not everyday balance, right? Like the balance is sometimes you don't follow the routine. Sometimes you do step out of the meeting early. Sometimes you do miss a swimming practice, right? Like that's the balance, is the reflecting of the reality, I think, and leaning into it as opposed to trying to resist it.
Yes.
The more I tried to design things to create balance, outside of like I need to meditate and drink coffee every day, the less likely I seemed able to achieve that balance, right? So just kind of leaning into what comes, I would say, is the thing that helps there.
Yep, I agree. Ellen, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely, I don't think I don't think about work-life balance in that way. I suppose I think more about like, am I in balance? Which again is that thing of like, am I happy? Am I flourishing? Am I in balance? And that means kind of, me, Ellen, am I okay? Am I seeing my friends? And I know am I sleeping? All those bits that hold me personally in balance, like me as a wife, me as a mother, me as a working professional. So there are lots of different kind of elements of my life I need to be in balance. And I think on a daily or weekly basis, depending on, again, like, are the trains running? Are the kids happy? Are the kids healthy? Is there something big going on at work? How's my husband doing? Is the dog sick? I don't know. According to all those things, I need to lean in a little bit more to one area or another, or if I'm tired or if I'm this, So I suppose I'm thinking about it more as, how do you keep yourself in balance in that thing? If I'm in a flourishing space, I'm enjoying stuff, and when something's not right, correcting it a little bit, whether that is, I need to do a few more hours at work and just actually, I've woken up before. I don't want to say like I never work outside working hours. I woke up at like 6:30 one Saturday morning and just spent 3 hours clearing my emails before the weekend,
the best
because
feeling.
I was just feeling stressed about it.
Carrie, yeah.
Kind of when I say draw boundaries, there's no point drawing on there, drawing boundaries, and then I'm really stressed out because I'm not supposed to do that. So I think it's really trying to stay in tune with how you're feeling, and put in an extra date night if it's, you and your partner, but pick the girls up from school early one day if you feel like you haven't seen them. Try to keep yourself in balance, I think.
Yeah, I actually love that reframe. And it kind of goes back to like putting your oxygen mask on first. It's like, if I'm not in balance, me in all different facets of my life, then nothing else around me is going to be in balance. So take stock of what you need. And then, yeah, I love that. And tending to your own garden. Well, I see a lot of questions, so let's dive in. Okay. Sophia asks, how did you both navigate motherhood when making the pivot? In terms of being upfront about having a family, as we know, this is often seen directly in the workforce for mothers versus fathers. I work in a male-dominated industry, and it's super stressful during interviews or even networking, trying to navigate this without feeling bad about being a mom.
God, it's such a hard question. I think you don't want to work anywhere that's going to make you feel bad about it. But I don't know if that's just a glib thing to say, right? Because maybe the thing that you've particularly chosen is, 95% men, and you have to deal with that. But again, there are lots of men who really lean into being a parent. So I think I'd be saying, as I was navigating it, I certainly did at PP, can I meet some people, please, to talk about your culture? Can I meet some other parents? Can I meet people to try to understand what it's like? So sometimes it's not men versus women. It's just like, can I talk to some other parents and understand what's going on? I would certainly do my research. Again, I think if you can get to the place where you say, this is me, these are my super strengths, this is what I'm really good at, this is what I bring, are you interested in it? Take it or leave it a little bit. If you can get that level of confidence in doing that, it makes a difference. But don't be afraid to probe and find, parents. Maybe it doesn't have to be mothers, but engage parents.
I love that advice.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to navigate throughout a pivot with that awareness. But one, you should never feel bad about being a mom or a parent at all. Being a mom actually opens up a whole new world of skills that you may not have realized that you actually have,
Yeah.
that are very applicable to the workplace, male dominated industry or not. So I always lean into that. I am so much more organized and efficient than I ever was pre being a mom. I've had to be, but I don't have to communicate that part. I can just say I'm very organized and efficient, and demonstrate that, right? I have had instances, not at BP, but in previous environments where I've seen kind of the dynamic between a man who maybe has a more traditional thought process around the parenthood split, than going against, I guess, a mother. And I once watched this woman just repeat his questions right back to him, like, "Oh, well, what are you doing with your children this weekend? And what are you doing this afternoon with your kid?" And I, in my head, was like, I want to be that person when I grow up. That she's amazing, and it wasn't. It was meant to be like a little cutting, but it was an off guard kind of like disarming thing. Like, hey, you're asking me questions or putting me in a position as a mother to make a difference or highlight a difference between our contributions to this work environment, right? So I'll ask you those questions. How does being a parent affect your contribution to the work environment? So in terms of pivot, I think just always leaning into the skills that being a mom has established for you. And yeah, don't be afraid to make the odd comment here and there if needed.
Yeah, leaning into those skills that motherhood brings is extremely important.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, let's see. What other questions? Oh, okay. Meg, you mentioned having time blocks even for housework. Do you mind sharing more details about that? I have a 10-month-old and balancing the house management with 2 working parents has been hard. I feel that. And
Yeah.
Meg, actually, I am also like, tell us your schedule.
Yeah, I can share a screenshot of, I literally have like a calendar that every day is assigned a different room in my house for cleaning. My husband and I have a split, like you do these rooms, I do these rooms, and we've based it based off of what days of our week we feel we have more time. Like Mondays are always crazy for me, so I'm not doing a lot of household stuff on Monday. My husband Nat will take whatever happens on Monday. Tuesdays are a little bit easier. So Tuesday morning before I start my work day, I'll do some cleaning in a room and things like that. We have our scheduling meeting every week. So we sit down, have coffee after drop off, and just kind of go through the schedule for the next 2 weeks, make any adjustments we need to. So we're both on the same page about where our daughter's going, what she needs to do, what's happening for work, what's happening for my husband, all of those things. We have alignment there. And then we have another day for financial planning where we just go through, everything that's happened financially for the week, what we want to do, what our goals are, any adjustments we need to make, any surprises that came up, things like that, just to make sure that we're in alignment. I always felt like if we didn't have that dedicated time, things just pile up. And I'm a person who, if my environment is messy or it feels out of order, I can't brain. I can't think thoughts, right? So I need to have that worked out, but I also didn't want to spend every weekend doing all of the things. So the next logical thought process for me was, how do I divide all of the work and how do we tackle it together in a way where it's like a little bit and not all one massive thing, and no one's deep cleaning the living room at 3 o'clock in the morning. Not saying that that has happened, but not saying that it hasn't. So yeah, that's kind of where we landed. Not a perfect system by any means, but it works for us.
Well, and it all goes back to what Ellen said about like making sure you are in balance.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. True.
Those are some very tactical things that we can, that was, I'm like, okay, financial meeting. I'm gonna go
I'll send you my whiteboard of every day and what's assigned to it. Yeah,
yeah. Oh, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
for sure.
Okay, I think we probably have time for about one or two more. Um, what challenges did you face when resuming back to work after a maternity break or parental leave?
I'll take that. Some basic ones, like I didn't want to wear anything in my wardrobe. I think lots of people find that, but it's so true. Like whatever you wore before, because you haven't worn it for like a year and a half. You wear stuff, you wear maternity clothes, you do that. And I remember thinking like, oh my God. So I wish I'd sort of planned that a little bit further in advance rather than the week before getting out my work wardrobe and thinking, oh shit, none of this is good. I think that bit, Meg, you saying about setting up what is the routine, like what's my childcare? I think you have to plan way further in advance in many countries your childcare than you think you do. It takes a long time to find the right childcare options, daycare, nannies, whatever you go for. It takes a long time. So planning that and then planning your routines around it. How long does it take me to get to the nursery, from the nursery to the metro, to the subway, to the office, however long it takes, like planning that route. What am I going to do when they get cold? So I think there's organization. There's, Meg's pointing out they get colds. If you don't know that, if you put them in nursery, the first like month, 2 months, they'll just be home all of the time because they have a cold. So you may
And
as
then
well
you get the
come in
cold.
early.
So it was just like you get the cold, then after that too.
You get the cold. Everyone will get the
Endless
cold.
cycle.
Everybody is
Yeah.
ill
We're all
all of
getting
the
sick.
time. So plan for that. So I think that planning, and then when you're back in the office, that bit, get used to the fact that there's a part of you that is not in the office. That is that's a weird feeling to get back to. But also, it's bloody amazing that you can have a cup of coffee or tea and sit and actually like drink the coffee or tea and read your emails, and nobody is screaming or harassing you. So there are some really good things about being back in the office. I remember sitting at my desk with a cup of tea just thinking, this is awesome.
So quiet.
You can go to the toilet and nobody disturbs you. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I only have one thing to add to your absolutely wonderful breakdown of returning from maternity leave, Ellen. And for me specifically, pumping. Oh my good God. Breastfeeding was a challenge. Also, I feel like breastfeeding generally is a challenge for everybody. It's not like it's suddenly you know how to do it, but it does feel like it's treated that way, at least in the States where it's kind of like, yeah, you inherently know how to breastfeed now. Like, here's a small baby. So I pumped when I was back in the office after my maternity leave, and I was just constantly in a moving to a room, in like a weird room by myself. It was what, taking meetings, trying to do notes with attached to a pump. It was crazy. I don't want to do again ever. The pumping part was such a nightmare. So that part sucked.
And we have talked a lot about pumping and, return to office. And in a previous mPower Hour, someone like showed her schedule. She was like, well, I do this and then I have to pump and then I do this. And so I think sometimes your employers and your team don't actually know what like the time and the physiological, like the need and, all the things that go into that. So I think thinking about pumping and thinking about what that looks like and communicating that. We have I think a masterclass that was kind of about in World Breastfeeding Week, really talking about that, breastfeeding going back to work. So I would encourage you to look at that. And we are at time, but thank you both so much for your vulnerability, being candid about your journeys, and being candid about being a mom in the workforce. We so appreciate it. And I know I took so much from this, and I know our community did too. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. I'm sure
Yeah,
I
thank
can
you.
speak for Ellen. Feel free to reach out to us, anybody, if you have any other questions or thoughts or anything. We're happy to LinkedIn you anytime.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, and to our community today, I hope you will join us next week for our masterclass with L'Oreal Thompson Payton, author of Stop Waiting for Perfect. We can't wait for that conversation. But until then, thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you got something out of this you can take on your career journey and beyond. Thank you. And thank you to Meg and Ellen.